Happy Tuesday. Good morning. Good morning. Who is here? I'm going on early today because I normally go on at 45 after the hour. I'm going on half an hour early because I have to go help my daughter move out of her dorm. She's finished with school for the semester, coming home for the summer. And so I've got to go help her move out this morning. So I'm going on a little bit early. Welcome in. Please read the show notes. And I am Dana, aka Draz. Welcome in. Chill out, everyone. Like it, swipe it's in the house. How are you today? How is Tara? Are you terrorizing the world this morning? That was good. I'm going to have to coin that one. Terrorizing the world. Terrorizing whatnot, for sure. For sure. Welcome in. All right. So if you have questions, what do you need help with? Put it in the chat with a question mark so it shows up bold, whether it's a question or not. It's just a comment you want me to see. Put it in bold so that I can see it. Always terrorizing these whatnot streets. Yep. Yep. I believe it. So in the show notes, there are 6 starred bullets that are the official places where you go to get help on this app and to get information about different things. My treadmill is making weird noises. I might need to grease it at some point here. I don't know what it's doing. So ignore if you hear some grinding noise. All right. Yeah, starred bullets. And the first one is the Whatnot seller account here on the app. How do people sell Disney products and brand names without getting copyrighted? What do you mean? Like they're selling, I mean, as long as it's a legit product and they're just reselling something that already exists. I mean, if you go into Walmart, they're selling Disney copy, right? We're the reseller, not the creator. So, unless they're selling fakes or they are making something out of Disney products and didn't have license to do it, then that's fine. But you can sell licensed product if it's just a item that can be sold as a reseller. You can go into Walmart all day long and there's all kinds of licensed products, right? For sale. All right, so Whatnot sellers, the Whatnot app on YouTube, Seller Academy, help.whatnot.com, the Whatnot blog, and the Meetups hub are all those starred bullets. So make sure you take a screenshot of those and remember those official references. Okay. And in my auction tab, so if you go into the shop, and go to the auction tab, there are 22 items currently in there that are all just references, cheat sheets, ideas, information for different things, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. So make sure you go through the auction tab while you're in here and get all that information. What about a Zippy with a Carhartt logo or a Zippy with a Nike logo? So there are people that are upcycling clothing and other things. I haven't heard of any of them getting in trouble. So I don't know what that is. That's kind of up in the air because that's kind of a newer thing. I wouldn't be surprised if if it goes, if it goes more and more viral, if that doesn't, yeah. Because you're changing their item, right? If you take a Nike sweatshirt, cut it up, use part of it in a different garment, then technically you're changing their item. But yeah, I haven't heard of anyone getting nailed on that, but it's very possible. So yeah, because I know there's people all over Facebook selling stuff like that. So you can cut up the item, but you shouldn't be using their logo. And they are using their logo, right? They're leaving the part of the sweatshirt that has the logo on it as part of the upcycled item, right? Yeah. Let's see. As long as you're not making any merchandise with logos that are owned, but if it's bought, you can resell. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because you can't make your own version of someone else's logoed or licensed image or whatever, right? Yeah. Because you don't own the rights to make that image. Yeah. Yeah, no worries. It's good to know. I mean, it's good to know what's allowed and what's not allowed so that you can protect yourself. I know that there's a lot of items that will say, for example, I sell fabric, and there's a lot of fabric that will say on the actual fabric, it will say, copyright not for use outside of, I don't remember the verbiage exactly, but it says something like you're not allowed to use this item to make things that you resell. But the thing is that lawsuits have then come back and said, well, you sold this through a retailer or through a wholesaler to people who can then take it and make things out of it. And so they're making things out of it. So it's kind of hard to go after people who are making something out of it and then telling them that they can only have it for their own use. So it's kind of a gray area. Let's put it that way. Let's see. I have watched your shipping videos. I'm still a little confused. If I sell a couple of fat quarters, it goes in my own poly mailer as long as it's under a pound. Yeah, anything under a pound always goes in your own packaging ground advantage. That's just that's how Whatnot set up for everything under a pound. So you don't send it in, flat rate or priority packaging until it goes over a pound. Because that's what the criteria is for over a pound. Yeah. Yep. You're welcome. And then, yeah, just look at this little chart that's on here. This one will kind of help clarify that. This shipping label chart helps you to understand, what your label is and what kind of packaging you can use per type of label. So just take a screenshot of that. It's actually the shipping on Whatnot is kind of like, it just goes based on what the Postal Service does, because our contract for shipping is through the Postal Service through a third party shippo. And so, we've negotiated special rates, but it follows exactly how the post office works. So you have to, kind of understand how the post office works. Let's see. So if you buy, say, a Disney fabric, you can't make something and sell it. Technically, that is true. And I have heard of craft fairs getting raided and having them shut down booths who were selling licensed products made with fabrics that they weren't supposed to. There are lots of Etsy sellers who got in big trouble selling licensed fabric items that they made to sell. So that is technically true. But it's kind of a gray area again, because when it goes to legal sources, the legal ones are like, once they buy it, once the end user buys it, the licensed seller or the person who originally licensed it has no say what they do with it. So it's kind of a gray area. Yeah, you can resell the fabric, but you can't necessarily resell something you make with it because they go after people for that. But again, I don't know of any cases where they've actually taken them, they've threatened, but I don't know of any cases where they actually, I mean, what does Disney have to gain going after some poor Etsy seller who makes, you know, couple $1,000s? That it gets them nothing. So they just threaten. But if you had a big time seller who was buying, bolts and bolts and bolts and bolts of Disney fabric and then making stuff out of it and reselling it as a product, that directly competes with Disney, who sells products, right? So they would definitely go after them and shut them down. Yeah. So, yeah. But that it is kind of just, yeah, they just file them with a cease and desist, and then the small players shrink down because they don't want to get in trouble. So technically you're not supposed to sell because it competes with them. Because if you sell, like if you're making, let's say you're making like little bowl cozies with the Disney fabric, right? Well, Disney themselves could make similar products themselves and that all the profit goes to them. Whereas, they made the profit on the licensed fabric initially, but then they aren't getting the profit on the licensed product made with the fabric. So, yeah. There was a guy making fake purses and he did it for years until someone posted it on social media. Yeah, exactly. When I first came on the app, we had a guy that was taking old, like, designer bags, like what brands, I don't know, Gucci and stuff like that, and he, like old worn out ones, and he was upcycling them and making them into new wallets, bags, luggage tags, other things, and I think he got shut down. So because of that. Hey, Field Trip Quilting is in the house. How are you this morning? So, yeah. Disney has a special team of monitors for Etsy and eBay. Yeah. And I'm sure we're going to get on the monitor with Disney as well. So just be careful. Just be careful. Because, yeah, and you definitely don't want to because there were people that were getting in trouble too with, saying something like, what's the word they would use? So they would do something that was like very obviously a Disney character in artwork or something, and they would say it was like this. Well, duh, it is that. That's what you're copying. So be careful with that too, because I know there's some people on here creating artwork using Disney characters, and it's like, no, they're going to get their butt in trouble at some point because, those are licensed characters. Likeness. Yeah, that's the word they would use. Yeah. So, yep. All right. Good discussion because you never know. So, you have to just be careful because people don't even think about it sometimes. It's like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then it's like, oops, I screwed up. Riley Blake has some for whatnot. Oh, some people monitoring. Yeah. Well, because we have sellers who are taking brand new lines that they bought directly from the from the maker, who are turning around and selling it for dollar starts. And technically that's against terms of service because when you buy their fabric new, you agree to the terms of service, which is that you won't sell it for less than the um, suggested retail price until they have dropped the price. Then you can drop your price. So if you're buying older lines at discounts, you can sell that for less than original retail. But if it hasn't been 120 days, I think is the rule. If it hasn't been 120 days since that line released and they haven't dropped the price yet, you're under contract to sell that for manufacturer pricing. And they have a right to be pissed because you have all the quilt shops out there who are following the rules, and then they come on Whatnot and see everybody selling it for $1. So yeah. Yeah, and some are more if they reprint. Exactly. Yep. So, those of you that are selling fabric you buy from the manufacturer, make sure that if you're buying it within the time limit of it still being a new released fabric, that you aren't selling it for less than manufactured retail price. You can see it on the website. You're so anal about contracts. Yeah, so make sure you're following the rules. It protects everybody. And I mean, don't be a narc, but if you have sellers that aren't following the rules, I mean, they'll get caught eventually. So, they because if they have people monitoring that, then someone's going to get their contract yanked, or, at the very least, they're going to be told you got to stop doing this. So, yeah. And it really benefits everybody if everybody follows the rules, because you have a rule breaker and then everyone's like, wait a minute, right? RBD is no longer taking not only wholesalers. Yeah, that's what I've heard too. So, why do some buyers only buy if you have max shipping? Sometimes that's the first thing they ask. I do max shipping on my fabric show. Well, because buyers will come in and ask because they don't want to start buying a bunch of stuff only to find out that the shipping's just going to keep going up the more they buy. So, if you can offer max shipping, that's to your benefit. And Whatnot took that away from brand new sellers, that you can still offer it in the sense that if you have your shipping settings set for flat rate, it's going to max them out at $9.21 if you have both 1 to 5 pounds and 5 pounds and over set for flat rate. The thing you have to be careful of is that you're going to have to curate your shows in a way that you don't end up, really screwing yourself on the back end because you had too many people buy too much, and then you have to pay part of the shipping. So you have to just be careful, so curate your show in a way that you don't end up selling too much to 1 or 2 people more than once or twice a week, because you do have 5 free adjustments that you can use. But, just be careful about that, because you can always watch your orders and go, okay, we need to wrap things up. It's getting to where I've got 3 or 4 people that are going to be outside of fitting in a flat rate box. That makes sense. So, because you can still be able to have it that way if you set your shipping settings that way. Yeah, it's going to cost you either an adjustment, or if you run out of your 5 adjustments per week, you're paying part of their shipping. But it's still to your benefit as well as their benefit to have it set, if you can, to the $9.21, and have 1 to 5 pounds and 5 pounds over set to $9.21 or to flat rate, because then it only charges you as the seller. You've they've paid the 921 and then you're only paying the additional. If you have it set for 5 pounds and over ground advantage, then it starts charging you as the seller when you have to unbundle. So it's to your advantage to always use flat rate if that works for you. Now, sellers who sell large, bulky items, vintage, I don't know, other kinds of stuff, they can't necessarily afford to do that because it would be astronomical to cover, everybody's shipping if you're trying to use flat rate. So you have to decide what works for you. Well, they stopped offering it to new sellers because they wanted new sellers to learn how to do shipping, because we had too many new sellers coming on and just going nuts, and then they wouldn't even ship the items to people because they looked at what the shipping was going to cost them, and they just gave up and walked away and left Whatnot with a big fat mess of a bunch of canceled or orders they had to refund. So they just were like, okay, we need sellers who are legit, who want to do this, that are willing to learn without just coming on and selling a bunch of crap and then walking away. So, yeah. Is that why they are charging sellers for canceled orders also? Yes. Yeah, because you had a bunch of people coming on here that just didn't know what the heck they were doing at all. And they just were, well, and scammers too, because it disenfranchises the scammers if they know that they're not going to be able to get away with just coming on and doing a bunch of shows for a short amount of time, not fulfill orders, not actually send anything. It's going to get them nowhere. So, you want to disenfranchise scammers. They don't have a set, like exactly when you're going to get reduced shipping. They said it was case by case. So, I think as soon as you've proven yourself, you can ask, and then they'll turn it on for you if they feel like you've proven yourself. So they haven't really said it's a set thing. Yeah. So I have not heard. I don't know. Has anyone joined that didn't have the max shipping and then they've gotten it since then? Tell us what you had to do to get it, or did they just suddenly one day you had it? Has anyone had that experience yet? I'm curious. So what Jen was able to do max shipping on my first show. Did you apply to sell a long time ago and then just not start doing shows until recently though? Because you would have been grandfathered in. Yeah, so that's why. But people who signed up brand new to start selling within the last, I think, 5 or 6 months, they don't have it turned on automatically for them. So, yeah. But they really haven't come out and said. Let's see. I found the same. I recently applied for RBD and they said I must have a brick and mortar or legitimate online store, not Whatnot. Ah, there you go. Yeah. I do think so. There's a ton of Etsy shops that sell fabric and have been for years. And I think if you had an Etsy shop, that would help. But yeah, they do want the fabric manufacturers are wanting sellers who actually have either a brick and mortar or their own online fabric shop, not just through a platform. So yeah, that's a reason you set up a website. Yeah, I don't have a website. I used to, and I got rid of it. Now I wish I hadn't, but it is what it is. It is what it is. You have to decide what you want to focus on and what's going to work for you. And there are other ways to do things. Yeah. Let's see. It's funny because I can't talk about my site on Whatnot, and I don't really talk about Whatnot on my site. Yeah, exactly. Hey, Joan, how are you today? Welcome in. Yeah, because you can get in trouble on Whatnot if you're sending people to buy stuff on a different website, even if it's your own. But you can promote your social media, which is a roundabout way where people could actually find your other site too. So, you can say you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and whatever, wherever else you have a social media presence, and you should do that. So, my fabric rep stated all the manufacturers think Whatnot is a passing phase. Oh no, I don't think so. We have made a major disruption in the fabric world, and it's not going away anytime soon. um, yeah, yeah, they should love us. We are, like I said, we are making a major disruption in the fabric world. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. Etsy has a big presence in fabric too, but it's very much like the quilt shops. It's just kind of, you go in there, you find a piece you want, you buy it, but it's not the live selling, fast paced, sell tons of fabric all at once. They need to get on board with the future of fabric. Exactly. So, oh, Moda is embracing it. Okay, well, that's good that you're selling. They're just happy that you're selling it at MAP. Yeah, exactly. So, well, and it's really, honestly, here's the thing. They're thrilled that they're getting rid of a lot of their dead stock that they used to have to find alternative ways to unload that stuff, right? So they are blowing through the dead stock that they didn't used to have to. So the problem is you've got the quilt shops and the bigger stores complaining because people aren't shopping brick and mortar as much as they used to. And you've got the Etsy people in a panic because their sales are down because we're making a major disruption in how people are buying fabric, and more people are finding us here and learning they can get better deals, and a lot of people are embracing buying estate fabric. And you know I mean, here's the other thing too. In meetings they think it's just a flash in the pan. Yeah, it's kind of funny, huh? Retail has always been about the pivot. Yes, absolutely. So here's the thing. There have been lines of fabric that the quilt shops would not buy that we have been buying and selling that have exploded and gone viral thanks to Whatnot. So the manufacturers have to love that, because there were lines of fabric. Because we have a broader audience. A quilt shop has their little niche, has their little thing, and they kind of follow these fun little trends, right? But we can take fabric that is amazing fabric that just for whatever reason wasn't the vibe of the quilt shops, and we throw it out here on Whatnot, and suddenly it's like the hottest thing, right? So we've changed the narrative. It's like, no, this stuff's really awesome. And suddenly they're going to start making stuff that we have made more popular. Yeah, we've changed the game. So yeah, exactly. There's lines of fabric and whatnot that people have never seen because your three quilt shops don't have it, or your area doesn't carry that. People don't even know about some brands of fabric because their local area has never had it. And they're coming on here and going, wow, this exists. This is amazing fabric, and we can show it and tell it and sell it. And suddenly, these manufacturers have an inroad they never had before. So, yeah, it is changing. They may think that it's you know, a passing thing, but it's not. Yeah, the amount of fabric we can sell in an hour compared to a brick and mortar store is mind blowing. And they're going to need to recognize that. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, and it's the same in a lot of other categories. You know, People are getting introduced to clothing brands and makeup brands and food brands and all these other things that they didn't even know existed because their local area didn't carry it. And people are introducing things on whatnot, and it's getting out there. And, they need to embrace that and be thankful, because every business, the more your product gets out there and you expand, right? That's huge. That's huge. Field Trip says I sold 500 yards in 1 week, posted on Threads. Shops were saying they were happy when they sold 50 a week. Yeah, the difference is huge. Exactly. What do you start a yard of fabric for? Well, Kelly, that's a loaded question because it just all depends on what it is, who it is. A yard of fabric that is, a solid, a print, a desirable brand. Is it vintage? Is it just it just all depends. Everybody has to decide your own strategy, how you want to price things, how you want to sell, what works for you. Let's see. I agree with you 100%, but what about pricing that people get away with on whatnot? Is that going to affect things moving forward? Yes. And if the manufacturers are starting to pay attention and come down on some of the sellers and say, you know what, you either start selling at MAP or we're yanking your contract, then that will affect pricing. And I see that already starting to happen. Some of the bigger sellers who always did dollar starts no matter what, they're bundling, they're selling out of the buy it now, they're having to change it up because they realize they're going to get you know yanked if they don't. So you have to, they're starting to pay attention because we've made enough of a big disruption that's going to change. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, there's quite a few that were selling entire bolts that have pulled back on that. And it's funny because because we have a factor, and I think this is true in every category. You have the storage locker and the estate people that when they find a whole storage locker full of something specific, they then have a show in that specific category. And that happens to us in fabric as well. You'll get a seller who's a storage locker seller who comes on and they bought a storage locker and it may have really nice stuff in it. Well, that disrupts all of us for however many weeks it takes them to blow through that because they'll go on and do dollar starts, right? And they can because they didn't buy that fabric, they bought the storage locker, right? And I do that too. I'm having a sale today because we got a storage locker haul from a quilter. It's not a huge one, but a decent size. And I can afford to do lower starts because it's not stuff I bought from the manufacturer. So, yeah. Who needs a whole bolt as a consumer? The people who make quilts so fast and need a whole bolt for backing. I mean, that happens, right? I know a lot of quilters in my area who blow through fabric like you wouldn't believe. And there are a lot of people who have their own long arm quilting businesses and they will provide the backing. And so they have yards and bolts of fabric sitting in their shop because someone brings in a quilt top to get quilted, and they can just let them pick out and pay for, the fabric they want on the back. You're just bitter. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Quilt guilds will buy bolts of fabric. Yeah. So, yeah, it depends. So, I mean, it's amazing. When I go by estates, sometimes it's like, it's mind blowing how much fabric sometimes that quilters have. If they've been quilting for, 20, 30 years, the amount of fabric they can amass is just like, holy cow. They could have a store in their basement every day and try to sell their fabric and still never get it all sold before they die, you know? Yeah, that's why so many of them go online, because they're just trying to get rid of some of their stash. So, yep. I have a lady that I buy from who has been quilting her whole life, and she's like a lot of creatives. She starts a project and then gets bored with it and moves on to something else. And half the time, she's like, here, just take this. I don't want it anymore. She'll sell stuff for dollars that she paid hundreds of dollars for because she's just bored with it. So she moves on to something else. Um, it's interesting. I went to a needlepoint estate sale on the weekend, and she had over $1 million in stuff for sure. It was wild. Yeah. It's crazy. The shows that we've been doing that, so there's a gentleman whose wife passed away last year, and we've been doing an estate sale for him, and selling off hers. And she worked for the quilt shop for years in addition to doing all of her own stuff. And the amount of stuff she had was, I mean, amazing. We're winding that one down. Um, and then we're going to move on to some of the other people that she worked with. It's just like they amass a ton of fabric. So, but I mean, thing with fabric is it does take a lot more room to store. You can have someone who collects spoons or thimbles or trading cards, and it doesn't take as much room to store stuff like that. When you do estate sales like that, do you buy outright or give them profits from the show? It depends on what you negotiate. Um, you know, I mean, ideally, I want to buy it outright because that's an easier model. But sometimes the the way the collection is set up, or how it's too large, it might work better another way. Yeah, it is emotional. I mean, if you guys have been in my show and those estate sales, that gentleman that we're working with right now, he's become like uncle. And, selling his wife's stuff it's very emotional. So, but I like it. That to me, that's a big part of it because it's there's a backstory, and the backstory means something, and it means something to me to take something that someone else loved and pass it to someone else who's going to enjoy it and use it. And because at some point, people like that, they get desperate and they just end up donating it to, Goodwill or thrift or whatever, and then they really don't ever know what happens to it. And I have people come into my shows, and like recently I had someone in a show buy a quilt kit, and live in the chat with him watching, she asked, can I know the lady's first name so I can put it on the project when I finish it? Right? And I'm just like, so of course I'm like in the chat, woo, because it was very touching that she cared to want to put her name on it, because it was a quilt set where she had made most of the blocks already. Right? Isn't that sweet? So And he, of course, was very touched by that. And, it makes a big difference. So I think having a story, sharing as much as you can humanizes it. And we want that. We want it to be about people and what they've done and what they loved and so on. Right? 904 Vintage, thank you for the raid. Let me get her pulled up here. 904 Vintage. Two guys sharing their love of antiques, plants, fabrics, and more. And there's a show tomorrow, 5:30 a.m. And please bookmark that. 904, make sure you have multiple shows on your schedule at all times because I'm bookmarking that one show, right? And that's awesome for you. But if you had 5 shows, we could all bookmark 5 shows instead of one show. So always have multiple shows. I'm just giving you a tip. I'm doing a seller chat. I'm not trying to embarrass you. Always have multiple shows on your schedule. Okay, that's how you grow. That's how you get found. That's how people find you again, is by having multiple shows on your schedule. And thank you so much for the raid. I know it's a good combo. Plants and fabric and other stuff. Love it. All right. And let me make sure I didn't miss any comments or questions. Let's see. How do you go about finding estate sales in a specific area? Wherever you guys kind of have to experiment with where people post them. In my area, most of the estate sales get put on Facebook Marketplace. So you have to just kind of research where people post things. And I would say Facebook Marketplace is probably what most people find is working best. But like we have a couple of other resources in our state that people still post a lot to because we have a local media outlet that runs TV, print, and radio. And for many, many years, that was where everybody posted things. So, yeah. Yes, the Facebook Marketplace has been one of my best sources for sourcing. So you can see where people are posting things for sale. You can see where people are posting estate sales, all of that. Yep. And honestly, when people ask me about sourcing, I'm like, when you're first starting out, your best source is what you already have, first of all. And then the next best source is what everybody around you physically has. Your mom, your aunt, your cousins. Start telling everybody what you're doing, and you'll be amazed at how much stuff shows up at your door, either free or very low cost that you can sell. And then you start branching out after that once you get established. Don't go and spend thousands of dollars on inventory until you know how it's going to work, what your niche is going to be, and because you'll figure that out pretty fast. And then your sourcing can be more targeted on what's going to work for you. So, don't go out and spend thousands and go into debt to start selling on whatnot. It doesn't work that way. You can start with what you already have and then what you can source locally. And then, even then, local is still the best source because you don't have to pay to get it shipped. You can touch it, you can see it, you can smell it, and know that it's good and that you're going to be able to sell it. Once you start buying other ways, it's a lot more expensive, and you start getting into risky areas of, am I actually going to get what I ordered? Am I going to get scammed? So be really careful, branching out into the wholesale, into the pallets, into the all that kind of stuff because you don't want to get scammed. Local, and here's another tip. Some people don't even realize what is made in your local area, what's manufactured in your local area. Do the research because you might find that there's certain things manufactured in your local area, and there are warehouse stores or warehouse sales or things like that that you can take advantage of and get product that you can, source locally. Dahlquist says my sister works for an estate seller. She says fabric sells good. I told her because they are going to resell and whatnot. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So yeah, really focus on sourcing locally as much as possible, because the other thing about reselling is it's all about, how low of a starting point you get, because you need to be able to make a profit in reselling, and especially on whatnot, pricing is lower. It just is, because of how the platform works. It's an auction site. If the prices don't start lower, people are not incentivized to bid. So you've got to be able to get a really low wholesale, or not wholesale, a really low original price to be able to flip it and make money. And if you're buying new through certain sources, you're just not going to be profitable because you didn't have a good enough margin to be able to flip it. So, you got to really pay attention to that. And one of the numbers you need to pay attention to when you look at your analytics, this should be a number that you really focus on. And that is, what are you making? What's your average cost or sale per order? What, I'm not saying that the right way. What is your average price per order? So if you go into your analytics, you can look at how much is the average order. And that should be constantly going up if you're doing the right things. If it's not, then you need to change things about how you're sourcing, how you're selling, because you need to constantly improve the amount per order. That needs to constantly go up so that you're more and more profitable as you continue to grow and sell. So pay attention to that number. Welcome in. Thanks for joining. Please read the show notes. If you have questions, ask them in chat, and I will try and make sure I address them. If it's a question or a comment that you want me to read, put it with a question mark so it shows up bold. I only have about 10 more minutes that I can stay on live because I have to go help my daughter this morning. That's why I went out early. She's finishing up her second semester at college, coming home for the summer, and I'm not ready. It's been, I love my daughter, but it's been very nice to not have a kid in the house. So I get my kid back. Hopefully she's a lot less of a kid, if that makes sense. So empty nester is a real thing. And you're like, okay, can I have a kid again? She's still my kid. She still calls. She still comes home on weekends. You know what I mean? But I haven't been having to direct her everyday life for a long time, and that's been nice. So, yeah. All of you who've sent kids out know what I mean. Having them come back is like, okay, here we go again. You're welcome. So your first show went good. I figured out the shipping setting I had wrong, but it didn't cost me much. Oh, okay, good. Good. Yeah, it's important to figure that out pretty quick so that you don't screw too much up and get discouraged. Welcome in. Paul Sews too. Welcome in. All right. Yeah. Go through the show notes. Make sure you see everything that's in there. And then if you click the shop button and go to the auction tab, everything in my auction tab are all of my little cheat sheets, tips and tricks, and other things that just give you information about different topics. And I can talk through any of those that people want. We just got another raid. Who just raided? Radiant Bloom. Is that who raided? Radiant Bloom. No, Hip Chick. Hip Chick raid. Welcome in, everybody. Hip Chick is right here. Her name is Maxine. She sells colorful clothes, high quality thrifted designer brands, including Farm Rio, Johnny Was, Boho, Ralph Lauren, Purple Label. And she has shows scheduled. She has a show today. That's weird that it's showing up on your thing still. That's the one you just rated from, right? No, that's today later. Oh, so you're doing another one shortly. All right, welcome in, and please everyone bookmark and follow Hip Chick. And she looks like she's got awesome stuff. Thank you, Maxine, for the raid. I remember your logo because you guys are super cute on your little like hippie boho vibes there. Welcome in. Oh, yes, I'm going to be in Austin. Who else is going to be in Austin? Write the word Austin with a question mark in chat if you're going to be in Austin. I will be there. My husband and I will be there. And super excited to hopefully get to meet some other fabric sellers. I don't know how it's going to be structured. I'm hoping that maybe at some point they're going to, break out categories. So, so that we can see, people in our own category. So, but I don't know. I haven't heard the exact. So next year you'll be there, field trip. Okay. So far, no other fabric sellers going. We should have our own. I know how to do conventions. We should. There have been a couple of times that we were close to making something happen, and then because we actually for a while we were all going to go on a cruise, and then that kind of broke down. So you don't know about Austin yet. It's a seller summit this weekend in Austin. If you're too new, you wouldn't have been invited because it is a seller summit for established sellers, and the content is not. They didn't do new seller content, so it's more for established sellers who want to come and get together and hang out with like-minded and kind of speak about, ways to grow your business. Yeah. So yeah, don't be offended if you didn't get an invite. It was targeted at, and I don't know what their criteria was, but yeah. I'm hoping I can work some sources for inventory. Yeah, that would be really awesome networking. Yep. So City Stash was supposed to be there, and then they had to cancel. So I don't know if any other fabric sellers going, which makes me kind of sad. Does anyone know of any other fabric sellers going to Austin? Let's see. Nope. Okay. Well, bummer. I guess I'm going to be there representing the fabric community. That's okay. I can represent as well. So, yeah. All right. I need to get going here pretty quick. So if you have questions, we had to get together locally here in Utah, February of 2025. It was a lot of fun. If you guys want to do a fabric meetup, we'd have to kind of brainstorm where would be a good location that enough people would, be able to come. Maybe we should do it. Maybe I'll do a live stream at some point where I go live and say, the show is where should we have a fabric seller meetup? And then we can apply through the meetup on the meetups website to see if Whatnot will sponsor one for us. That would be awesome. So I know there's the big thing coming up in Chicago, one of the big fabric wholesale. I can't remember what it's called. Someone tell me. Has an H in it. That's coming up. H&H. Yeah, there we go. H&H. What does that stand for? You'll be there. So you'll be able to meet Jean and George. They'll be there maybe. So make sure and reach out to her if you want to meet up with them. I don't think I'm going to make that trip. I was going to try and go to Las Vegas for a couple of, there was a big, there's the big convention there every year, but I didn't feel like it would, oh, they're a German company, so it could be something else. I didn't feel like it would be beneficial because it was featuring just all kinds of different products that I don't really source. And then there was a smaller fabric one that I could have gone to. So, yeah, we'll see. Anyway, all right, you guys, I better go. Make it a great day. Stop in on our show if you're interested to see what we're pulling out of storage unit boxes. Could be fun. So far, the ones we actually only went through about a bin and a half for the entire last show, and it was full of really cute panels, and we sold a bunch of fat quarters, and we had some scrap bags. So could be fun to see what else is in there. I know there's some quilt kits, so that will be interesting. So I have enough inventory right now that I haven't actually been tempted to look through it a lot, which is surprising because normally when I source fabric, I'm like, I get home, I'm like, oh, what's in here? And let's look. And I just am so overwhelmed with stuff right now. I haven't actually really looked much in it. So, yeah. All right, let's go find someone to raid. You guys have a wonderful day. And if you like these shows, bookmark Tuesday, Thursdays. And I'm here walking. And hopefully my treadmill that's making a weird noise, I'm going to have to oil it or something. Anyway, I digress. Let me go see who we can raid into in fabric. I usually raid a fabric seller. It makes sense. And let's see who's live. All right, we have a couple of choices here. Let's see. Let me pick someone that I haven't rated in a while. That from here. How about Cambria Boyd? Does that sound good? All right. Love you guys. Have a wonderful day. And rating over to Cambria Boyd. Bye for now.